So once we have this documentation, standard documentation or standard guidelines there, um, we will have a much more stable systems of stable development process. So step zero isn't a bureaucracy, actually. It's a foundation of reliability. When you define the standard first, you remove the ambiguity later. All right, so let's move on to step number one. So before you design any integration, you have to understand who and what you are designing for. So step one is about alignment, identifying your stakeholders, understanding the business problem, and mapping the process and data flow end to end. That's the first step. So let's start with the stakeholders. Every integration project has multiple layers of ownership, business sponsors, and who define the value, enterprise architects who guide the principles, developers who build, and operation team who run it. If their roles aren't clear from day one, accountability gets blurred. So we do not know who is doing what, and it happened many times. So and sometimes because of this, requirements are missed out, and then at the end we say, oh, oops, we didn't cover that. That's why we build sometimes a Reiki matrix. So it's called responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed to ensure decisions flow smoothly. When the integration spans multiple vendors, that matrix becomes even more critical, because then we know which vendor is doing what, and who's responsible for what. Next, we focus on why integration is needed. So once we understood, okay, we know the stakeholders, we have their responsibilities very clear. Then we dive into why we need integration. Is it about synchronizing data across system? Is it about automating a business process end to end? Or is it about creating a unified experience, like showing Salesforce data inside Dynamics or ServiceNow? Clarity on the question, clarity on this question defines the integration type. Is it a data integration? It's a process integration, or is it a UI integration, or something else? Once that's understood, we move to process mapping. So now we are clear for so far three things. Number one, we need to be very clear about stakeholders. Number two, we are clear about why integration is needed. And the third is, and the last one is in this, it's process mapping. So we capture the end-to-end workflow, which system talks to which, and what triggers the integration, and these which steps are business critical. For example, in employee onboarding, a workday event might trigger. I'm just, because I work with Workday, Salesforce, and all those things, that I'm taking these examples. So a workday event might trigger user creation in Active Directory, send notification to ServiceNow, and provision access in Dynamics. So one continued process across four systems. Then we translate the business goals into technical outcomes. For instance, reduce the onboarding time from 3 days to 30 minutes becomes an architectural goal. Event-driven integration with automated provisioning via logic apps and functions, we can do this thing, right? So finally, we document the data flow and the integration. Once we have understood the why we need it, we understood the process mapping, and we document all those things. So every system, every payload, every direction of movement, this ensures we understand ownership, governance, and compliance boundaries right from the start. So we are not waiting for the last. We know what we are doing. The takeaway here is simple. Integration success isn't built in the cloud. It is built in conversation. So when you know your stakeholders, understand the process, define the data flow, and the design naturally align with the business value, that's why step one isn't technical, it's more strategic. It's where architecture seems architecture earns its seat in the business, at the business table. So I hope it is clear that why it is important to understand stakeholders, why it's important to understand business problem, and why we have to document all of those things. Let's move on to second step. Now, The step two is identifying the systems involved and document them. Now, once we understand the business process, the next step is to map technical landscape, the system involves and how they connect. In step two, we start with a system discovery exercise. So now, like we just gone through, first we have stabilized the standards. Second, we have understood why, who's the stakeholders, why we need integration, and the business process. So now we are clear with those things. Now the next step is a little bit more technical. We need to think about the systems we have. We have to basically document them. So document their interfaces, document or what they do. So we list every system that sends or receives data. Salesforce, Workday, Dynamics 365, ServiceNow, SAP, SQL Server, flat file stores, even IoT event sources. So we just document all of them. Just write down, okay, this X system for under this process does this. All right, so each system is classified as a source and target, or sometimes both. This gives us a visibility of full ecosystem we are integrating. Next is to we focus on data ownership and dependency. So for every entity, customer, it might be customer, it might be product, it might be employee, it might be policy. We determine which system is the system of control, system of record, which is the consumer, and which depends on the other. So we are identifying the dependencies among these systems. We also identify cross-system dependencies like authentication chains or data sequencing. Knowing who owns which data avoids conflict and data loop problems later. So now, once we are clear about the system, we are clear about the interfaces, we are clear about the data, who owns what data, right? So that makes us to understand the whole picture of the system. So we know the system, we know the stakeholders, we know the process, we know the system, we know the interfaces, we know all those data aspect, which system owns what data. So knowing these things avoid problem later stage. And then we create two critical artifacts out of this exercise: system catalog and the interface or API catalog. So in the system catalog, we document every system, its owner, environment, URL, support teams, and contact points. So we just document all of those things. In the interface catalog or API catalog, we captures every integration touch point: API endpoints, database tables, file shares, service bus topics, and event grid subscriptions, and whatever you can think of. We just document all of them, which will be important and will be important in later stage, now important right now. Together, these catalogs become the blueprint of your integration landscape. So now we understand the whole picture, right? For brownfield scenarios where integration already exists, we take a different approach, right? So we inspect the current integration layer. So let's say one thing, when we had system, but they were not automated, they were not talking to each other the way digitally. So basically there were some files they are uploading, downloading, so that was happening in the early one. Now when we have brownfield, like for example in the last project, I had a Boomi interface between various services, right? So that was a brownfield scenario. So integration was there. So we inspect the current integration layer. Maybe like in my case, it was Boomi. It could be a BizTalk, it could be a MuleSoft, or it could be older logic apps consumption models. So it could be anything. We evaluate what can be reused and what needs modernization. Okay, so it's not like a basically just swipe everything out and put something new. So we can see, we have to analyze things. We might to change process, we might to enhance something else. We need to think about all those things. By documenting system ownership and dependencies early, we reduce surprise for later stage, right? So we prevent duplication, we clarify accountability, and enable better design decisions for reliability, scalability, and in fact, we can reduce the cost. In short, if I say step 2 gives us the map of the battlefield. Every system, every connection, and every dependency we are now fully aware of. So we know what's happening. Without this map, even the best integration design is just a guesswork. So if you do not know who is to deal with, we are just shooting in the dark. We have no idea. All right. So let's move on to the next step. The step number 3 is steps. Choose the right integration strategies and patterns. So it's an easy one. It's not very difficult. Now that we know our system and our data, and we know our interfaces and everything, it's time to choose how they will talk. And the right integration strategy and pattern. Start by aligning with the business goals. Do we need real-time APIs? Do we need event-driven automation? Do we need batch synchronization? So we have to think about what kind of strategy will be best for our solution point of view. Then select the right Azure integration pattern. For example, use publish subscribe for multi-system notification, or might be queue-based load leveling when you expect burst of traffic, or might be a circuit breaker pattern. Depends how you want to implement it. The goal is to pick patterns that balance performance, reliability, and think about cost as well, because cost is one of the factor I have seen people ignore completely. They do not think about cost in the early stage. Uh, so we need to calculate the cost as early as possible. At least we can't give the exact figure, but we can look at approx amount it will cost to our customer or our client, and document your rationale so future teams can reuse and evolve it. Choosing the right pattern isn't about technology preferences, it's about matching the integration method to the business outcome. All right, so it is important we understand what pattern to be used. Or next is design and document integration and review. I mean, once we have created our design, it's a blueprint that need to be reviewed not by just you, but reviewed by other team members, other teams, or say members in your same team, and it all need to be approved as well. So we design the integration and document every part of it clearly, and start from your architecture design. Show how data flow through APIM, logic app, service bus, functions, and define boundaries between these systems. Include security, I mean, retry for resiliency, retries, error handling, and right from the start. I mean, these things need to be at very early stage. Should not ignore governance and resiliency, performance, all those factors we need to think about. Say non-functional requirements, but we need to think about these things very early stage. Use Azure's reference architecture so your design stays aligned with the Microsoft best practices. Every design must include schemas, mappings, and SLAs, because integration isn't just about data movement, it's